Hi, Renee.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Uh, this is the Art and Social Activism Festival online Meet the Artist visit with Renee Phillips. The festival for this spring focuses on health, wellness, mental wellness, and art. And it, of course, has shifted to the online format that you're seeing right now. So it is running through April 30th. So please do check out their website and their feeds for regular series that will be going on over the next few weeks. So I'm Dawn Delikat. I am the Associate Executive Director at the Pen and Brush. The Pen and Brush is a 125-year-old nonprofit dedicated to supporting women artists and writers, as well as non-binary artists and writers. So if you're not familiar, please check us out. I would like to thank Nicholas Cohen, the founder of Art and Social Activism Festival, as well as the curatorial committee for inviting me to have this conversation with Renee tonight. Renee has shown at the Pen and Brush several times in group exhibitions, as well as a featured two-person, sort of two solo exhibitions with her and an artist by the name of Kati Willem, who actually is Renee's studio mate in Manhattan, now in Chelsea. So that was curated by myself and my partner in art and crime, Parker Daly Garcia. So, you know, we know Renee's work well, and we are really excited to be here today to find out what's been going on with you and your process and your studio during this quarantine time.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm obviously sad the show is not going on, but you know, excited I'm healthy and safe, and I'm still able to create some art in my garage. I'm down in Delray Beach, Florida, so I do have the luxury of having a garage that I can work out of. So it's been a little, my little sanctuary of art creation. It's a little hot. It's like 92 degrees today, but we're getting some stuff done. It's
That's
good.
incredible.
Yeah.
So to jump right in, Renee has some small works that are her meditation studies behind her. And I also am very proud that I have one of her meditation studies in my apartment here called Yellow Cake. So for those of you that are not familiar with Renee Phillips's practice, she is very much what we call a process artist. I think probably more than any contemporary artist I've met in the last decade. Renee has been called an alchemist by myself, my colleague Parker Daly Garcia, as well as many other writers, and for good reason, because Renee really takes her practice to a scientific level of experimentation. In terms of paint quality, paint textures, paint colors, measuring the humidity in the room, the studio that she's creating, as well as movement, you know, air, wind, her own body, literally waving canvases around and creating pressure and, you know, using gravity against itself, against the paint, mixing paints and polymer together. So it's very scientific, but within that process, it is an alchemy in a sense, because what she captures is that literal freezing of the paint and the polymer and all of these tensions, how they merge, and how she's measured and studied them endlessly to really know the result that she's going to get. So if you maybe want to take us up close in your studio to some of those works that kind of can show people those qualities coming together and exploding.
Yes. It gets me so excited to hear you talk about my process. Thank you. I mean, just to kind of tell you a little bit more, I noticed while doing my process years ago that every color did something different. And so while I would be putting it on these larger wood panels is what I use because it's a harder surface, and sometimes I use a power sander, I would be getting like different effects one month, then the other month it would change. And so I finally realized I need to study these colors and what exactly they do, and write down the temperature and humidity every single time I do them. And what I found is that every color wants to do something different. They all also do something different when put under the pressure of humidity, temperature, wind, gravity. So you'll see behind me, there's some meditation studies. I'll take you up close. These are some of the meditation studies I did for our healthcare workers. And you can see how the whites really give me these really nice, luscious ripples. Some of the nude colors are giving me much more softer ripples and no cracks and no rips. I did this blue one this week, which I really loved because it also is soft. It had a really nice soft rip and gave me lots of really nice ripples. Because I'm working in Florida now and the humidity is so high, the paint is staying open longer and is giving me a little bit more of these like smooth, luscious ripples. I've also been working on these pieces up here, really working with wind and gravity to get some of these rips. Now this is latex and spray paint, like highly manipulated with wind and gravity. Let's see.
That's great. I saw a question come in from Parker. How do you keep them from cracking? So being that you're in this very humid environment now in Florida versus when you were in your studio in Manhattan, how have you had to adapt and adjust your practice?
If I want cracking, I can now manipulate it with a lot of wind to get cracking. However, I'm still not going to get the same amount of cracking I would get when I would work in the New York studio in the dead of winter. And sometimes the cracking would get so severe I would have to put a humidifier in the room. So I bought a commercial grade humidifier and I would pump in more humidity. I had this great little temperature and humidity chart, and I would need to be in a certain range. I think under 25% humidity, it just wasn't working for the paint. So I'd have to get the humidity above 25%.
I see. So when you went close to those studies, you mentioned that those are the studies you've been doing for healthcare workers. An amazing initiative we've seen you launch on Instagram, where Renee is actually, I think you're taking the names by a lottery of who recommends sort of these healthcare heroes of ours now in this time that we're facing, to give you the names and you draw from a lottery. Is it every few days, once a week? And if you could just talk about the thought process that, you know, made you kind of compelled to do this.
Yeah, I think it was week 1 in quarantine when all I could do was stay home, but these healthcare workers were putting their lives on the line every day, and I thought they need to be celebrated. They're going to come out of this and need a serious vacation, but also I want to give them something where they can remember all of the work that they did for our community, all of the service. I mean, they really, I don't think they signed up to be doctors to put their lives on the line, and they are every single day. So I want to make sure that they have something tangible that they can look at it and be like, I can't believe that moment in time, and thank goodness it's over, and I'm healthy and I'm here. And there was a girl in Florida staying at her house creating art in the garage at the same time I was saving lives every day. So I hope it can just be a moment for them to reflect and be happy that they're healthy and alive, and just thankful. We're so thankful for them. So I put out the call, and I very quickly got nominations from 15 friends and family of doctors and nurses and healthcare workers. And the responses were just so heartfelt. It was, my brother's been working every single day in the ER, putting his life on the line. I know he would so much enjoy a piece of art, you know, in a few weeks at the end of, just to remember this time. And every single message was like that. And it really made me tear up because it really means a lot to them. I don't have any friends or family that are really on the front lines in the ER helping people with COVID. So to get the messages from the friends and family, it was really, really, really incredible. So I'm looking at the names, and I create a piece of art for that specific person, kind of based on where they are in the world, where they live. I don't know. I just kind of like try and get an energy of what's going on with them, and then I'll create the piece of art. And I create a piece of art every single day, and then I announce it on Instagram. I haven't announced today's yet, but I'll get that in a second so we can announce it maybe a little bit later. It's still drying. And then the pieces take about a week to cure. The paint needs to cure, and then they'll be sent out. So the first batch will go out next week.
That's incredible. I've seen some of the interactions with medical workers and doctors on their Instagram accounts reposting and thanking you. So it's really an incredible thing that you can give them this moment of beauty and relief that honors them and honors the life affirming fight that they're really in on all of our behalfs right now. So thank you for that. It's incredible. And also I was kind of thinking on how, in your documentary, and for anyone who's interested, there is an incredible short documentary on Renee on her website that kind of takes you through her background as a daughter of a scientist and how they would go and sit out in nature and how she feels so connected to the natural world. And you kind of come to understand how she ends up manipulating paint to have the explosions that they do, just like the evolution of nature itself. And it's kind of like using paint to replicate that geology that we find in nature that's so awe-inspiring. And really, if any of you have ever stood in front of Renee's paintings, and I'm sure she has some bigger ones in her studio that maybe we'll walk to next, but they are awe-inspiring, absolutely. And my colleague Parker had mentioned the fact that she's doing these experiments, and you had a series called Controlled Chaos. Your whole process is really an effort of controlled chaos, as is nature in a sense.
For sure.
So it's almost like through all of your rigor and your experimentation, and then when you kind of come to those big works and let all that knowledge go and let it loose for a minute, an explosion happens, and we get to travel with you because you freeze it in time the way you do, the movement of the paint. When we as viewers stand before your paintings, we get that kind of excitement of discovery that you got when you created the work, that really feels very much like nature, not only because the quote unquote abstractions, though I know they're really not abstractions of anything, resemble nature, and nature from a plane, nature in a microcosm. We get that awe for a moment. So I was just wondering, like, that is such a meditative process that you mentioned in your documentary. Yeah. About how when you first came to New York, part of the way you refined your technique was a calming effect and a meditation in a sense in your own studio. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering, kind of now in the time of COVID and creating as an artist with a very refined practice already, but now that you're doing it kind of under quarantine, how that meditative process sort of helps you along throughout the day.
I mean, it definitely helps me along because it's a confusing time right now. Sometimes I don't know what day it is. I've got my daughter at home. I'm trying to work. We're all going through a range of emotions. Like every day, every week, it's a new emotion. Right. But creating the art is very meditative for me. I mean, I could literally sit and watch paint dry for hours because I think it is just super fun to like watch it evolve over time, and like, what is this color going to give me next? And if I hit it with wind, what is it going to do next? So I found basically if I can get into the garage for an hour every day, I am able to find peace and like have a very good day during this time. But the art that is coming out has been quite vibrant. I mean, it's not sad or depressing. The colors are very alive. The forms are very alive. They're moving, they're cracking, they're dripping. And I was very interested to see what colors would come out because I love color so much. And and I do plan my colors, but it's not this like big plan of, last month I saw a lot of blues and now I'm going to do blue in the studio. It's more like, let me feel what colors I'm feeling. I'll plan them out on my mixing table and I'll mix the colors same day. So I was very interested to see weekly what kind of colors I would be working with. And then when I pulled the Instagram users and asked them, what colors do you see when, we say COVID-19 and you're in quarantine? And there was like lots of reds and grays and there were some whites. And then I said, what colors do you see after the pandemic? And it was bright yellows, happy yellows, like the sunrise, soft, happy blues, blue like scrubs, peaches, corals. So I was not expecting yellows at all. And I would say 70% of the responses were yellows. So I started working in the yellow sunrise sunset palette this week, and it's been super fun. It's very enlivening, you know, so it's incredible what color can do for your emotional well-being. And it's very interesting to me that people all over the world wrote in and they all had the same idea of colors for this, you know, quarantine COVID time. And it's the reds and the grays. And so I found that to be very interesting.
Absolutely. I was also thinking about the forethought, you know, on the part of this festival and Nick Cohen, and wanting to talk about art and mental wellness before COVID hit. And, you know, you were going to be part of that live festival in New York City this spring, and your work is so on point with that meditative, cathartic process that you experience creating it, and then you give us the benefit of as the viewer as well, in addition to the connection of nature that is, you know, such a sublime, calming aspect of all of humanity, really. So it's interesting that now this hit, and you know, people in the arts seem to always kind of be having their pulse on the barometer of what's going on. So yeah, it's kind of incredible that the mission of the Art and Activism Festival really is hitting a pressure point that we can talk about mental wellness through art when everyone is at home, and you know, suddenly there's all this dialogue about how important the arts are because everyone's at home, and realizing that literally everything they engage with is created by some form of an artist, whether it's on Netflix or a film or, you know, the chair you're sitting in, yeah, any form of entertainment. So it's kind of an interesting time, especially for an artist such as yourself that creates right on this cross section of mental, you know, meditative processes, really, yeah, in the way you work and how you provide that solace and sheer beauty through your work, really.
Thank you. And then what I was actually going to show at the Art and Social Activism Festival was from a new series called The Overview Effect. The Overview Effect is a term that was actually, I think, coined in the 80s, describing, as you're flying in an airplane, the aerial imagery of Earth makes you kind of have this cognitive shift in perspective. And so when astronauts go up into space and they look at Earth from above, they're saying they have this profound spiritual experience. And they're scientists. They're not necessarily religious or spiritual, but they're saying they had this complete, overwhelming mental, physical, cognitive shift in perspective where national boundaries went away, fights over the little things became less important, and you really want to come together for like an entire planetary society. And it's almost like this pandemic is creating that, but from a micro level versus the macro level. So it's an interesting term if anybody is interested in delving into it. There's actually a documentary called The Overview Effect that interviews these astronauts and this experience that they have, because it's very much related to what is going on right now, how national boundaries dissolve, things that were once important to us, just they're not important anymore. So I'm finding that to be very interesting because I was in deep into the Overview Effect from a macro level, looking at the Earth from above, studying these images from NASA satellite imagery. And then this microorganism comes along and makes us look at it from a very different perspective.
Yeah, that's very insightful, and so true, as we're all experiencing, you know, the things of the daily life that we held on to and maybe overcomplicated or getting caught up in, and now when everything is forced to stop, those realizations are so powerful, and you know, really very much like when you hear astronauts speak about their perspective of life on Earth when you're off of the planet looking down on it. So yeah, that's incredible. And it's interesting how, again, you know, we always say, like, art historians, it's really rewarding because when you look at things 100 years back and you see how an artist was foretelling something, because they're just so in tune with trying to pay attention to how humanity and society is slow moving, and what are the shifts, and what does it feel like to be here? What does it then look like? You know, you're always kind of ahead of the curve, and here we are with you seeing how ahead of the curve you were with your works in real time because of what happened.
Well, thank you. I do have one big piece here. It's not done, but I can show it to you. You want me to?
Yeah, I was going to say, let's go and see a big piece where kind of all of your work and processes manifest, and then Parker's reminding us to see the journals. So let's go in both directions.
I'll show you, Parker.
The final big work, and then where it all starts in your journals and your testing.
Okay, so here's the garage. I know, it's riveting. Here's the wall I work on. There's my refrigerator for my water and wine. Okay, so here is the larger piece I'm working on. I'm really working on building up the layers in this one, and I'll zoom in close so you can see it. It's layers and layers of enamel paint, spray paint, manipulated with wind and gravity. And so, I don't know if you can see some of these details here.
Yeah.
But
we can, it's working.
Okay, and then that will take us to the color journal. So everything I do, I have to write down. So I'm working in these colors right now, and you'll see the base is honest blue. I poured it and immediately sprayed it with, those are colors, Montana spray can colors. I write down like how long it dried before I manipulated it. I write down the color mixtures I have. Let me see if I can get some other pages here that have more writing on them. All right, so here I was working in shades of lavender. I was mixing all the different shades, so I'd have to write down like exactly what the mix was. Raisin, alpaca, 75% white. I have to write down what, I guess, viscosity, like eggshell, semi-gloss, matte. They all do something different. I have to write down when I poured it and when I tilted it. So you'll see this was poured at 11:15 a.m. and then I tilted it at 2:45. Sometimes there's like it's almost like a 3 to 4 hour period after it pours where it's really good to have the paint be manipulated. And then I have to go back into it 3 or 4 hours later. So it's really like a 12-hour process. Sometimes it's a 24-hour process. So there you can see more. Here's the paint I work with. You know, it's basically house paint mixed with polymers. Here's my mixing station. There's some colors I'm mixing and working with. Here's my fan. Here's some spray paint. And then here's some pieces I'm working on. I'm tilting them, getting the gravity working, getting the ripples going. I'm putting some wind on them to get a layer drying a little bit more. Yeah. And then here's some, I guess, pieces that are still in process. These over here are still in process. This one I love. This one's done. This one I think I'm going to be making for sale next week so it can offset some of the cost of making and shipping these works out.
Yes. And that's another thing I should mention. Obviously, you know, many of these works are for sale. I know that you were supposed to be showing with the Art and Social Activist Festival, so I don't know the online version, how you'll be offering them for sale, possibly through them. But anyone who's interested in Renee's work, please obviously DM anyone involved. And as she was saying, you know, she's trying to sell work to offset some of these costs of donating a work per day to medical workers.
Sorry. I'm like, how do I get back to my pretty wall? Okay, here we go.
So anyone who's interested in purchasing work, please do DM the Art and Social Activist Festival or Renee or even the folks at Pen and Brush, and we can all figure that out and work out what's available and how you can own one of these beautiful works and also support her initiatives to, you know, gift something to doctors and medical workers during this time. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the sculptural elements that you add into the pieces, like the one I have behind me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can
Let me get one from the studio. Hold on one second.
Okay. And I'm coming closer, moving the wrong way at the same time. to try to show you guys some of the sculptural elements in the piece that I have by Renee.
Yeah,
And
so
Renee's got
these
one.
are
Great.
a very
That's great.
similar technique.
Yes.
Basically, I am letting the enamel paint, latex paint, excuse me, mix with a thickener and a polymer. Then I pour them on thick sheets of plastic, let them cure for a week or two, and then I can peel them off and manipulate them. It's a really fun, visceral process. It's like my 3-year-old is working with slime right now, and I feel like this is slime for, you know, my 39-year-old self, because it's just so fun to play with. And for me, it's all about getting sculptural effects out of paint. So whether I can do that with the elements of gravity, wind, water, or I can do it by literally creating a sculptural form out of paint using polymers and mediums, like that is my ultimate goal.
Yes.
So this is really taking the sculptural effect to the next level. I've only done them small. I haven't tried to get really big yet. I think I'm going to need a lot more room, for one, and a lot more polymers and mediums, maybe like a large mixing bucket, that like an industrial mixing bucket. So that'll be like what's next for these pieces. But for now, I'm having a really nice time doing them small, because they're like little moments in time, little frozen moments of time.
Yes,
which is what
absolutely.
my goal is too, is, you know, freezing moments in time within the paint drying, within an experience.
Yes, that's great. Nick was pointing out that in the larger piece, you really see how your work ends up resembling nature's typography. So I don't know if you have any other large pieces that you can walk to in the studio.
I don't. I have a lot of them in my studio, which I cannot get to right now. So I have a new studio in Delray Beach, but it's closed. So I'm working from the garage.
Well, you do have a lot of them on your website, and we also have an archive of your exhibition with Kati Villum, Process and Color. So, you know, people who want to see more of the larger work, or on our Instagram feed or Renee's, you can certainly check those out as well and ask questions. So if anyone on the feed has any other questions, I tried to read a few as they came in, but if you want to fire them away now, and we can certainly answer them. But I was going to ask you what's next for your work, and you did mention going larger with the sculptural elements. So that's going to be exciting to see.
Yeah, it will be exciting to see. I feel like my brain is split 50-50 right now. It's like doing new things because nobody is looking and nobody's watching. Mm-hmm. And so I can experiment a little bit more, play a little bit more. I can mess up a little bit more, and people aren't, you know, wondering like, oh, she created some ugly art. And quite frankly, the best art comes out of ugly art. If the piece isn't hideous at some point, and I like can't stand it so much that I make this huge swath of color or movement or expression on it, then it honestly just becomes a subpar piece. So every excellent piece I've created, I hated at one point, which is, now I can understand that, but for the first few years, it would get me like really torn up mentally.
Right.
You know, like not liking this piece so much. So anyway, 50% of my mind is like kind of doing new things. And then the other 50% is trying to stay with, oh, this is the process I'm doing. This was the stuff I wanted to work on before the pandemic, and my brain was all over and I was trying new things. So I think at the end of this, the two heads will come together and create like a new series or a new form. It'll be interesting to see, because everybody, I think, is having these like dual moments of perspective and then chaos, and it's just like, what is going on? So I'm excited. I mean, good art is happening, so something cool.
Absolutely. So a few questions have been coming in. A few people asked about locations. Renee divides her time between Delray Beach, Florida and Manhattan. She has studios in both locations. Someone asked if you had another like dream place that you would create in, where would that be?
Oh, I have a dream to spend 1 year on an island and just create art from the land. So like using the palm trees instead of a paintbrush, using the sand instead of a medium. I just want to be one with the earth on an island and create, I don't know, some really weird island art, but that is a goal. I also love rocks. So every summer I take an inspiration trip. This summer, hopefully we'll be going to Colorado, which is where my family is from. And my dad used to make me sit on a rock and listen to the sounds and see the sights and kind of like really tap into my senses. So I think that was really a pivotal moment for like little 8-year-old me to be present on this earth and like look at the surface of earth. So thank you, Dad, if you're watching, for that profound experience. And I'm very excited to go back to Colorado and just really watch the world go by, look at the earth's surface, look at the layers of rock. I mean, the layers of rock are like, you know, the history of the world. You can see thousands of years go by just in one rock, and I find that fascinating.
So from your childhood and that deep connection and love and awe and respect for nature, when did that transition into becoming an artist? And or like how?
I went to art school and I was not inspired. I did not have any original thoughts for what I would like to create or what I would like to do. I really needed some life experience. So after college, I did not delve into art. I actually moved to New York City and started working for Wired magazine, which was an amazing, incredible job. And I was there for 7 years. And then my husband and I decided we were 30 and we were like, I think it's time, if we ever want to do it, to quit our jobs and travel the world. So that's what we did. We rented our apartment, we packed up, we backpacked through Asia. We spent 3 months in Asia. Then we spent 3 months in Europe. And my eyes were just, all of my senses were open to new experiences, new smells, new sights, new surfaces. And I came back and I wandered back into my little art school that I went to when I was a little girl, because we moved back down to Florida for a little bit. And I met a mentor named Edie Lampasona, and she started teaching me mixed media techniques that I hadn't learned in school. And she really pushed me to experiment and try things that art school told me not to do. She was like, you can mix oil with water, you know, like see what happens, or you can put this medium in with this paint. And so I started to do that, and I got excited about art for the first time in decades. And so I started creating art from that moment. That was 8 years ago. I started to do sea creatures first, and I was like, let me see if I have a business selling my sea creatures. And I went door to door knocking to see if the little design shops would buy my sea creatures, and they did. And so that gave me the confidence to really start creating art. I always had a part-time job in the beginning to relieve me of the financial pressures of needing to make money from my art, because I found that was incredibly suffocating to have that confinement on me. So I did always have a part-time job while I was doing that. And it just kind of snowballed from there. I did an art residency at the School of Visual Arts. And Jerry Saltz, the art critic for New York Mag, gave a talk, and he said, you really just need to do 3 things. You just need to show up every single day. You need to have a community of artists to just connect with, riff off of, critique with, and you only need a handful of good collectors that believe in you. And Pen and Brush is one of those establishments that believes in me and really allows me to do my work with an open heart and open mind. And so I thank you guys, because it's huge for an artist that just sits in their garage all day creating in a vortex. And so that's what I did. I was like, I'm just going to show up every day. And I did, and I made my notes, and my work evolved. And I'd say I saw a question come through, how long have you been doing this process? Mm-hmm. And the first 3 years that I was doing this kind of like process-oriented experimental art, I really didn't show my art. I turned my art studio into a science lab, and I just experimented for 3 years. And after those 3 years, I got a little bit of a series going, and I was like, all right, I think I'm ready to like start applying for some shows, showing my work, opening up my studio to the public. My art building, the West Chelsea Art Building in Manhattan, does an open studios twice a year. And so I opened up my studios, and I got great reviews from people. They were loving the texture and the art. And so that then gave me the confidence to really open my doors wide and start inviting people in to see my art.
That's great. That's incredible. And thank you for the work that you create. We always say at Pen and Brush, you know, without the artist really coming to the table and going through that battle that it is, of course, you know, to find your voice, to say something meaningful about the world, refine your process, carry part-time jobs. As we all know, anything that's a passion and your love of the arts, it's a path that you can't not follow, but there's a lot of suffering that is involved, but there's no other way. So without you, we have nothing to say. You know, it all starts with incredible women and non-binary artists really coming to the plate, ready and fighting for it to reflect our world and really say something that matters, that makes it worth us going to bat for you, you know, and really trying to create that space and give you space to grow and learn and get the recognition that you deserve. So thank you.
Thank you.
So you mentioned Jerry Saltz. Are you reading his book?
Oh, I've got it right
How to
here.
Be an Artist?
It's like an advertisement. I really love it, actually. It's just reminders. It's like,
yes.
Oh, this is why I became an artist. Oh, yeah, this thing I used to do 5 years ago, let me try and do it again, you know?
Yeah.
And it's very easily digestible. It's like snack bites of information, you know? So I can read a few chapters, put it down, play with my 3-year-old, and read a few more chapters. So I'm really enjoying it. It's the perfect time to have this type of book out because we need those reminders when we're in this like quarantine vortex of what's going on. Here are the ways to just do art every day. So it's a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It was funny. I don't know if it's on one of the reviews or where I read it, but Cindy Sherman said when she read the book, she realized she's actually an artist.
Oh my gosh. Wow, Cindy.
So that was really funny.
Funny.
I think a lot of the questions that we've been getting, you've been answering as you've been kind of sharing your really inspiring journey of how you got to this place. One other question that came in was, what artists have inspired you?
Oh my goodness. Helen Frankenthaler, obviously, with her expression and her colors. Mark Rothko for just his ballsy nature to be like, I'm just going to work with these, 3 colors and make huge art and just dive into color. And even when he thought people wouldn't get it, and they got it, and it makes you feel something. So walking into, I forget what show it was a few years back, and seeing these huge Mark Rothkos just like envelop my being. And with each color, your visceral reaction changes. And you have memories that come up with certain colors. Everybody's memory is different. And so I found that incredibly important. And then Jose Parla, who's a living and working artist in Brooklyn, I just love his physicality of painting. He also is inspired by the surface of Earth, but his surfaces are the city streets, the Miami streets, the New York City streets. He's looking at the billboards, the mold, things man and earth combine to create. It's mostly walls. So I love him too. That's great. Georgia O'Keeffe, of course. I love her for her like feminine forms, her compositions, her color palette, just everything about Georgia O'Keeffe I like.
I know you and I have talked a bit about Linda Bengley's as well.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Hello. She's like number 1. Of course you forget you're number 1.
Yeah, of course. I remember when your portfolio first came into Pen and Brush as a submission, and Parker was screaming, you've got to see this. Come see this work. And, very excited about it, of course. And when I first looked at it and we, got close and saw like, what is she doing? Like, this is such an authentic root of a contemporary, young, process-driven artist working in this way that's, it's like blowing our minds. It's merging things, but it's completely fresh and new in its own. But one thing that I'll never forget remembering, when I was in grad school, there was a big retrospective of Bengley's work at the New Museum. And I don't know if you were in New York yet, if you got to see it, I can't quite remember the year, maybe 2008 to 10, but there was, that whole back gallery on their ground floor had a paint pour, and it was just, it had that action of like the paint just being dumped, and it was 30 years old, and it looked like as fresh as the day she froze that paint and threw it on the floor. So I remember seeing that sculptural element in your bigger works, and how you're talking about nature and typography, and also with climate change and everything that's just, we're all facing. It's kind of a little bit on hold right now, though I'm sure you're all seeing the reports about pollution going down because we're all staying home and we can't drive. And
it's pretty great.
Yeah, how the animals are going nuts, and you know, before my park closed, birds were singing songs that I'd never heard, and I thought, I'm in this park with my dog every day. Now I'm here. Now I'm hearing birds. Is it the quarantine that's driving me crazy, or are these birds really amped up? And they're really amped up is the answer. But another thing I wanted to mention that was so funny on your Instagram account recently, you had posted some images that you took in nature. And
Okay.
before I read the caption, I thought they were new paintings.
Oh, wow. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that was an amazing
Thank
revelation. And Nick is reminding us Earth Day is April 22nd, so that'll be happening during the festival.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. But I think I'm just looking to see if there's any other questions. This has been an amazing conversation, as it always is with you, Renee. And I hope that we've been able to provide some relief and solace through the beauty and process of artist Renee Phillips.
Thank you, Dawn. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Nicholas, for the opportunity. So
Yes. Yes. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Nicholas and the curatorial committee. And, you know, please stay tuned because the Art and Social Activist Festival has one of these Meet the Artists coming up every Thursday night. They also have other initiatives. I joined in on a Zoom meeting on Monday that was talking about the restaurant industry and COVID's impact on their sphere. So, you know, please look at their website, look at their social, and enjoy the content and the thoughtful, significant meaning that's trying to really help us all grapple with this weird time, but also provide some art that's beautiful that gives us a relief. So if you have any questions, just DM any of us. And certainly if you'd like to buy some works from Renee and support her initiative to contribute one of these to a healthcare worker every single day, that would be completely amazing. So you know how to find us all. And I hope everyone stays safe, healthy, and well. Thanks,
and
Renee.
before we hang up, actually,
Yeah.
can I announce the healthcare worker that's getting art today?
Oh,
Is
that would be
cool?
amazing. Yes.
Okay, let's see here. Let me get the art.
Okay.
Okay, so this piece will be going to Dr. Claire Trescott, working in the ER of Seattle, Washington. She is 70 years old.
Wow.
And she is showing up every day, saving lives. We love you, Dr. Trescott. She was nominated by her friend, Casey Cronkite. So,
amazing.
Dr. Trescott, you'll be getting some art in 2 weeks, and we thank you very much.
Oh, that's incredible, Renee. Thank you so much.
So
thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.